sign up, so I had to run a graduation card down to it.
Very good.
So I was thinking,
Here's a busy weekend.
Aaron was like, yeah, nope.
I don't know.
It's a volunteer position.
Yeah. The pay is so good.
And the base really, yeah.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
my computer, so we all do this or this, it'll come up. It's
Okay.
awful slow for some.
All right, well, Jess can record votes if you need to.
Hopefully it'll work. Thanks.
We didn't even get to see him because he never got off work.
Okay, we'll start the meeting, guys.
Let's roll.
Go. I call to order this meeting of USD 49 Board of Education for May 17th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Our agenda is posted on board docs, a link for which is on the USD 49 website. I move to accept the agenda as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion about the agenda itself? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, please vote electronically the same way. Motion passes 7-0. All right. Consent agenda is next. The consent agenda includes board meeting minutes from April 26, 2021, an agreement with IDEA Title 6B assurances, personnel transactions, site council minutes from Hayes High School, Hayes Middle School, and Wilson Elementary School, and financial reports.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Second. Let's have a motion and a second. Anybody have any discussion? I do. Any discussion about the agenda, consent agenda? All right, I want to announce or acknowledge two retirements. Julie Kuntz has been with the district for 14 years, working in nutrition services at Wilson Elementary, most recently. Jim Glendenning has been with the district for 23 years, working in custodial services at Laughlin Elementary. I want to thank both of you for serving USD 49. The district has 10 new employees, 10 new hires since our last meeting. Welcome aboard Casey, Michaela, Amy, Faith, Reese, Dawn, Stephen, Peyton, Hannah, and Brian. Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Please vote electronically the same way. Alrighty. Next is public comment. It's an opportunity for folks to speak to the board at the meeting. Does anybody in the audience want to speak to us? Okay. Go ahead and step to the microphone, please. As a reminder, please tell us who you are and where you live. You have 3 minutes. Please do not repeat points already made. Well, you're the first person, so forget that. Board members might ask follow-up questions, but please do not be offended if we do not engage in a conversation. Please, okay, go ahead and start. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Casey Herman from Hayes, and this is the third board meeting I have attended. I'm here today to demand that this board votes on removing the mandates for masks and students and staff. I believe this board is completely out of touch with the community. I often wondered if the board is hiding scared at the houses all day. Have you guys been outside? Nobody is wearing a mask. USD 49 is the only place kids are wearing a mask, and that helps. My daughter, just right before I left here, just informed me that about half the kids have not wearing their masks at school, and in the hallways, a lot of kids are not, every day, not wearing their masks in the hallways. Have you seen that the over 75% clearance of hand sanitizer and cleaning products at Home Depot? They're still giving away free hand soap. Is anybody even getting tested anymore? I don't even see any cars at the testing container. Why is this board so afraid? All I've seen is fear from you, scared of what the media tells you to be afraid of. As I mentioned, you're out of touch, so I don't care how you vote. But the community needs to know how each one of you stand on this issue. We have an election coming, and voters need to know who listens to the community and who thinks they need to tell you what their medical decisions to make for your child. As it stands right now, 100%, I believe this board will keep masks indefinitely. With nearly 0 cases in the county, you would have to run from the Hayes High football field to Home Depot to find the constantly moving goalposts. Then this board requires masks for parents at enrollment. Lastly, and most infuriating, I sat here last meeting with the board and several of the staff with their masks off. Yeah, I saw you walking around with your mask off, and you know who you are. Then at the HMS Strings concert, it was announced that everyone, students and parents, have to have a mask on or there wouldn't be another concert. Does this board care about the community at all? And no, we are not your comrades. Leave your politics at home, and the community is sick of politics at school. I am running for this school board. I filed months ago because I know this board does not care about what the community thinks, and I'm not alone. There will be more regular people like me who will find the time we don't have to ensure this community's parents are well represented and the kids are put first with politics never. You have to make a decision. It is worth noting that nearly every school around Hayes does not require masks anymore, and every student that leaves the district is $5,000 less. I lived in Gorham and went to Russell for middle school, then came to Hayes as I didn't like how Russell's school system was being ran. Do you really think the parents are just going to keep their kids in the district with such a board that does not care what they think? I did it as a kid, driving 18 miles every morning. I paid for the fuel myself, working jobs after school. Victoria and Ellis are closer than that. You might want to see how other school boards are doing all around America as school board members are getting replaced because they are choosing politics over kids. Will you bring this to a vote? If you don't, that means the board does not care about the community and every board member needs to be replaced.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item, our presentations. We have a presentation from the Lincoln Elementary School redesign team. Ron, do you want to say something first?
Lincoln Elementary is here this evening. A lot of staff members. They are in the go launch holding pattern, and they are ready to ignite their rocket, and they're going to share some great information with the board this evening. So,
Great.
We're great to take a look.
Okay, I'm just going to be really quick because I didn't do the work that the staff did. I'll tell you, redesign is supposed to be teacher-driven, and it definitely was teacher-driven. I'm so proud of them and for what they have done, the data that they have gathered this year, the presentation that they're going to give to you tonight. I also wanted to let you know that we gave a presentation to the state committee this morning. And what that means is we had to do a presentation to get approved to launch, which means you have a plan in place and we give you our approval to start. And then the next step will be on June 8th. It will be presented to the State Board of Education, and they'll see what our plan is, and I would assume that they would approve. This morning they gave us raves about their presentation, said it was phenomenal, and I also have the email that they sent this afternoon giving us that approval, and they'll be sending us this big Apollo banner as a redesigned school to put in our school, and I'm going to turn it over to them because they have some awesome things to tell you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's the other mail.
Or see around the corner.
Probably to her computer.
Point it over here. Okay. Try to see a screen. Okay, I'm Monica Dreiling, and on first I got to figure out how to run it.
It's a PDF instead of a PowerPoint. Just have to scroll up. Just have to scroll through.
Scroll down. There we go. There we go.
I'll just do it for you. Okay, I'll give you a thumbs up. Okay, sounds good. So I am Monica Dreiling, and I am the redesign pilot and a 5th grade teacher at Lincoln Elementary School. De'Ara Lesage is the redesign co-pilot and a kindergarten teacher at Lincoln. Daphne Brown is a special education teacher in our building, soon to be school counselor. Maria Lozano is an ESL paraeducator and has given us a lot of valuable information about that population. And then Mrs. Lacey is our principal.
Yep.
So why redesign? So based on research that we did for our building, we have qualitative and quantitative needs that we've shown that redesign would help us meet those goals. The process aligns with our KISA goals that are listed there. Last year we found out that we were on school improvement. That process also goes along with that, and most importantly, it just benefits students. This is an example of one of 2 banners that we had made for our school. So as part of the redesign process, you really want to advertise and share your vision and your why statement. So our vision is future ready, every student, every day. And we just kind of did a play off of the district's vision. And then we want to empower students to persevere. So our why and our vision were created collaboratively with staff over several meetings. And as part of that process, we did something called Day in the Life of a Student, where we put ourselves in the shoes of a student. Like, what does school really look like for kids? And especially kids from different grade levels and different backgrounds. So our students are actually using Redesign language at this point. So this kiddo wrote in the question to, would you rather be a teacher or the student? They said, I would rather be a teacher because it would be cool to teach others to persevere.
Nice.
So as part of our redesign process, we needed to be very aware of our demographics and tell our story about our building. So our ELL population, you can see from 2019 to 2020 how it compares to the state. Our special education population, you can see almost half of our building's population receives special education services, which is, a much greater proportion than the state average. And socioeconomic status. We are in the 2019-2020 data, more than half of our building is classified as low SES. Now that is even higher. As part of the redesign process, we did some gap analysis. So what we found out about our building is that we have below benchmark reading scores. We were placed on school improvement due to scores on state assessments due to how kids in our special education subgroup scored. We have low family engagement and participation, with the exception of if we have things like family fun night or family dinners, then we have large turnouts to those kinds of events. Our classroom schedules were inconsistent each day. There's no 2 days where kids have the same schedule. We have 3 different PE teachers, 3 different art teachers, which makes it very difficult for staff to make connections with kids and to get to know kids well. And then limited partnerships within the community. The community has been great in supporting us when we ask for things, but we want to make sure that we have ongoing partnerships and where we offer them things as well. So continued gap analysis is that we have inconsistent progress monitoring and data collection. Students have lack of exposure to real-world experiences and have limited background knowledge. A lot of that is connected to the low SES status, and lack of opportunities and time for real-world and personalized learning. So we would like to improve reading scores school-wide, have a more consistent daily schedule, be highly interactive with our families. We would like to have more stability in staff, and then just have more collaboration and participation from community members and businesses. We would like to have a school-wide consistent system for progress monitoring. We would like kids to have more real-world applicable learning and personalized learning opportunities, and regular opportunities to practice healthy social emotional skills, and provide a self-regulation room for students, which is something that we were able to begin this year. So these are some barriers that we have. Right now we have an inadequate universal academic screener for grades K2, and we feel like with the adoption of FastBridge that will replace STAR early literacy, that will help us overcome that barrier. Lack of space dedicated for self-regulation in individual classrooms is an issue because our classrooms are so small. sharing of teachers amongst multiple buildings, lack of time for professional collaboration, and then just a lack of understanding of wants from our parents. So this is a video of some kindergarten students, and they are going to tell you what they are excited about in terms of redesign. So if you can just make sure the volume is on.
Actually, it's a PDF, I think. So.
Okay.
No, we couldn't open them, that's the one.
Oh, because you couldn't go through Google? Okay, I did not know that. Carry on to the next slide.
Okay.
So this is one of your turns.
For our prototype teams, what we did after the staff worked together and collaboratively decided what they wanted our goals to be for the redesign process. We had 3 prototype teams: the family engagement team, our community partnerships team, and the reading and MTSS team. And we let the teachers have some input into where their passions lied and what goal they would like to work on the most. So those groups met bi-weekly usually. They planned their own meetings, they took their own notes and did their own planning. Each group planned a scoreboard of how we were going to track the data for that particular goal, and we implemented that and they tracked their own data, so that was good.
Student success skills, community partnerships, personalized learning, and real-world application were priorities in developing areas of focus and designing prototypes, and you'll see this throughout our presentation and how each of our targeted areas directly related back to our core redesign principles. Our 3rd and 5th graders were involved in our community partnership prototypes. 3rd grade paired with Ellis County Farm Bureau and 5th grade with Worth Wealth Management. Both grade levels worked on real-world application skills that were a part of our core redesign principles. 5th grade worked on activities that covered stock market, financial literacy, and money management. 3rd grade worked with Ellis County Farm Bureau, and each month focused on agriculture in the classroom. Pumpkins, swine, beef, sunflowers, and bees were a few of the topics discussed. For the 2 prototype classes, the baseline data was 1 visit a month. The goal for the prototype was to obtain 2 to 4 interactions per month between the partnerships and the 2 classes. Current data shows a total of 22 interactions for the months of October through April, which met our goal. Pictured is our current scoreboard displaying our data collection and QR codes for each month's area of focus. The QR codes can be scanned and they link to videos that keep the school and community involved in what the class is currently learning. What's next? Clubs and houses. Some of the clubs that we plan to incorporate next year include Cultural Language Club, dance, robotics, cooking, sewing, board games, fitness, nutrition, and kindness. These were all developed collaboratively with students and staff. Students will be able to have a personalized learning structure where they are able to choose which club best suits their individual interest. And teachers will have the opportunity to invite different community members and families into clubs based on the content focus. Houses. The purpose of houses was to build school community and social skills and student interest. During houses, students were able to interact with their school families, which increased our student success skills. And we focused on a social skill each time we met, shared celebrations, and visited over breakfast. The older students enjoyed being peer models and showing leadership for our younger students.
Okay, again there you'll see the 4 core principles for redesign we included into our family engagement prototypes as well. For our family engagement prototypes, we really wanted feedback from our parents because we have known this was an area of concern for our school for a while, but we just felt like we didn't really know what we were missing or how to get parents more involved. So we sent home 2 different surveys. The first one, we just felt like we didn't get relevant data that were going to help us with our goals. Everything was positive, and we were like, okay, we know everything's not perfect here, so let's send home another one. We put more specific areas on the second survey, and we got some really good data. The surveys indicated that parents would really like to have after-school homework help. They were busy, struggling at home. We don't give our kids a lot of homework, but reading logs, even studying for assessments, spelling tests. They just weren't able to provide that opportunity for their kids at home. And so we decided we would do an after-school homework prototype group. During that prototype, each teacher picked one child that they thought would benefit from that with social emotional health and different areas academically as well. And they came and worked with a small group after school for 30, 45 minutes every day. So we had teachers that did that, and it went great. Everybody thought that was great. Also, text messages. Our parents indicated to us from the surveys that they would prefer to have text message as their main mean of communication. They said it was harder to get to emails, read through newsletters, go through folders at the end of the day. Text messages would just be more beneficial for them. So we implemented a prototype where we would send out a school-wide text message as our main means of communicating important information. Also, we made sure that, like we looked at earlier with the demographics, our ELL population continues to rise, to make sure that everything we sent home, whether it was from a classroom teacher or from the entire school, was translated into Spanish also. So those were the things that we did. Like I said, we had really good results from that. Here is our data from March. This was our student, and what we considered an interaction that we took data on was if a teacher and a family, they actually had back and forth communication. So like if you send an email home or a newsletter, that did not count as an interaction. So for the month of March, we had, I think it was 167. It's not up there, and I didn't bring my notes, so it was something close to that. But then by the time we got to April, I think we had 264. So we were really close. So our goal is 280, and that would be about 20 interactions per teacher a month. So that would be one family per day of back and forth communication. So we were kind of close to our goal, so I think we probably need to amp that up. But really just the prototypes helped us so much. The teachers knew that text messaging was a better form of communication. At homework group, we got to interact with parents as they picked up and things like that. So our communication did go up a lot from those prototypes. Next, the family engagement team has started a newsletter and a community calendar that we had Marie Henderson, our tech expert, link to our school website so that families can go there and get important information about community resources, different things that are going on at the school, and also just different tips just for family engagement. Also, we want to continue to use the surveys. That was a great way for us to just make sure that we were increasing opportunities based on what parents preferred. And, continuing the text messaging, of course, because that worked out really well, and we would like to expand the homework help after school as well.
Okay, again, these are our core redesign principles, which were incorporated into our reading and MTSS prototypes. Our reading prototypes included K1 PLC meetings and K1 Walk to MTSS framework. In the past, we had just done district-wide PLC meetings, so this was something new. And then with our schedule changes, it allowed us to do a Walk to MTSS framework, and we just did the prototype with K1 classrooms. Data from the winter 2020 district STAR reading assessment indicates the following. 40th percentile and up, 56%, 85 students. 25th to 39th percentile, 15%, which was 23 students. 10th to 24th percentile, 21%, which was 32 students. And 9th percentile was 8%, which was 13 students. Grades 2 through 5 were represented by this data, but like Monica said earlier, we didn't feel like the comprehensive reading assessment would work for K1 because of the lack of data. What's next? Schedule changes to increase collaboration and flexibility, building-wide PLCs, Walk to MTSS framework, and differentiated instruction. Teachers will meet collaboratively in professional learning communities to discuss student progress monitoring. We will create skill-based groups and interventions based on student needs. Our schedule changes will allow us to have building-wide multi-grade leveled MTSS time. The goal is to move at least 12 students grades 2 through 5 from a 39th percentile and below category to a higher percentile category by the end of the first 9 weeks of the 2021-2022 school year. K through 5 data will be reevaluated at the end of the first 9 weeks to set further goals. And pictured, you can just kind of see some of our MTSS groups that we prototyped during that time. Additional MTSS prototypes, self-regulation breaks, and self-regulation materials. During the prototyping phase, we were noticing the need for deregulation strategies for students in order to be successful in intervention groups. The materials and breaks were prototyped with a specific population with sensory needs. In the future, we will be providing a larger area and more materials and activities that all students will have available to them when self-regulation may be needed. Collaboration was extremely important throughout this whole redesign process, so we just included that on there, how we collaborated with staff, students, families, and communities and businesses. That was another cute video.
You guys are missing out too.
We will.
So they're good.
And then just our documentation, which included our redesign workbook and our team planning notes. Question?
Wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I was reflecting upon when you were looking at looking forward and the areas that you needed to improve. I thought, well, you know, I've been there quite a bit, and you guys seem to do a great job. So it must maybe kind of hard to highlight some of the things that you don't think you're doing very well, because I think you're doing a great job. But that's the first step, right? What can you improve? And then develop plans to improve it. How do you do I just was curious, how do we do translation? Do we have somebody at the school or in the district or? Okay. I know we did somehow, but I wasn't quite sure.
She's on our team, actually.
Okay.
She's wonderful, but we've talked about, she's getting very busy, you know, with if we translate
Yeah.
every single little classroom letter and everything. So, but she's excellent. She gets things, she's on the ball.
Oh, yeah. I figured it was done somehow, but I wasn't quite sure how.
But there's other translators in the district as well, but we just
Yeah.
happen to have one assessment at our school.
Of course, yeah. Okay.
So I have a question. As far as we're waiting for June 8th to get the approval, but what does that mean as far as we'll still do these changes with or without the approval? So I guess I don't know what the point of June 8th will be, and maybe that's a Carrie question, and I'm not sure.
That's state board. That's a state board.
The state committee will just present who they have requested their approval, and the state, it's just a formality pretty much.
Okay.
And we're going to do all of this stuff no matter what, but we were approved by the committee today.
So it
and they'll
just is
present
validating.
a list of who was approved to the state board.
Okay.
I think that, it is a formality. I mean, they said we were ready to launch. I think it would be really hard for them to go against the advice of the board that we presented to the state board would go against that committee, so.
Yeah. Well, and you're seeing progress and you're making positive changes and impact. So, okay, that makes sense.
I just had a couple of questions I wrote down and thanks for the presentation. Great job. On your clubs, are those multi-grade level clubs or are they by grade level?
No, they're multi-grade level, and we'll actually so we'll have the MTSS Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays will be open for clubs and houses. And we'll do houses, and then the following week we'll do clubs. And it's by student interest. So if a 5th grader wants to attend a club that a kindergarten teacher is hosting, then they can go.
I could see that being really beneficial. And the other question I have for the after-school MTSS, was there a problem with transportation if the kids stayed for 45 minutes? Were some kids not available because of not having transportation home?
During the prototype groups and some of the teachers, students, you know, we kind of worked around, we were like, okay, what's a student that you know that would benefit, that you think they would be able to come, so that we could actually get just some good data and make sure that we had kids there. But I can see that being a problem in the future.
So
we
that might be
definitely look at
something
that,
to
yeah.
investigate if we, if those kids stay, get them home.
Ladies, it's an
Thank you.
excellent presentation, and it's obvious why they were really impressed with what you did. I really want to thank you for being trailblazers for our district and to start this process, because we're going to need leaders like you to help for the rest of our district to maybe move forward. So thank you for that. Also, I'm glad to see that multi-level MTSS. You can meet kids where they're at and not put them in groups by just their grade level. So what a great opportunity for those kids to move forward where they're at and go as far as they can, no matter what level they're at. So thank you for, and it sounds like you're doing an awesome job, so please pass that on to the rest of your staff that we're very impressed.
And Alan, I wanted to add, we owe you a thanks too, because we couldn't do we will have every classroom doing MTSS at the same time, every morning. And we couldn't do that without another PE teacher or without flexibility of the music teacher. The PE teacher was huge. That has allowed us to do a lot. And so we owe you a thank you also for knowing what our needs are and helping push us along too. One of the awesome things about this whole process is it really makes you dig deep. Like they said, our first surveys, they were awesome. There's nothing wrong. And we're like, well, we know there is, and then when you ask those specific questions, and a lot of times, parents don't feel comfortable just saying, well, I wish you would work on this. I wish you would work on this. Why are you not doing this? So when we got really specific, we said, no, we want to know. And we really got some awesome responses from parents. And I'm so excited about the community partnerships. It's already starting to change. Even though we couldn't have them in our building this year, I think our prototypes would have been even different. We can't have parents at field trips, we can't have parents in the building, we can't have community partnerships. All of our presentations we did for our prototypes were outside. And I mean, they were very successful and very fun. So I just wanted to thank you guys, because without another PE teacher and the flexibility with another music teacher, we couldn't have worked on the schedule. And our schedule, the way it is next year, every classroom will have specials at the same time, every day, all week. So if you're a fifth grade teacher, every morning at 8:35 you have specials. If you're a kindergarten teacher, every afternoon at 1 o'clock you have specials. And that will also help with some stability and building relationships. And kids really do need to know what's happening next. Our kids who are dysregulated, we found that if we tell them what's coming up, then it helps to ease their minds and go, oh, okay, now I know what to expect. And so with the schedules being the same, and I have to commend my partners in crime with the other elementary principals, because basically we had our meeting and I went with my schedule and said, hey, what can you guys do to work around this? So they were great. And I just can't thank everyone that's been working on this enough. So.
Yeah.
There's so many benefits too from looking at it from a STED perspective, because I'm sad that I'm not as a STED teacher to be able to see this, because sometimes the scheduling was so hard. I would have first grade math for 30 minutes and then the other class would be doing first grade math because the specials were mismatched. And so whether you were doing inclusion services or pull-out services, you had to split your time, and there just wasn't enough time for those intensive services. So it's going to benefit their population just dramatically.
Great. Wow.
And not having to work around everyone else's schedule in the district to get those 3 PE teachers in whenever they don't need them, and 3 art teachers. So that's huge.
Wow. Okay.
Awesome.
Good to know. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. All right. Okay, next we have reports. We have Superintendent Wilson, District Communications, and then a report by Assistant Superintendent Chris Hipp, the KSDE audit.
Okay, just of course, I think everyone is aware we're in the last week of school, and a lot of activities going on this week as everyone kind of wraps up the school year, a lot of field trips, a lot of final things. Just wanted to also make the following week, though, is technically our last week with teachers. You remember that we did cut the calendar back, moved the calendar back for the end of school for this Friday. Teachers are coming back for 3 days. 2 of those days will be in-service time. We'll do some work on Fast Bridge on one day. We'll do some MTSS work and some other conversations about as we have some PLC conversations on Tuesday. And then Wednesday will be a work day for teachers, so we'll kind of wrap up that way. We are having the retirement breakfast.
Can you explain that what the MTSS and PLC is?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. We're gonna, MTSS is kind of been our initiative. It's multi-tiered systems of support. It's what we've been working on all year.
It's a nationwide effort?
Well,
Or there's other
it's about school
places.
improvement. It's about school improvement. We brought in a group, a local group. It's run by, in partnership with KSD, Kansas State Department of Ed, and they are working with us to help us develop a systematic approach. It's not that we weren't doing school improvement, it's that we didn't have a definite system. And so we're creating a system that will look pre-K-12 all the way through our grades will look similar, and that's where we're trying to clean up, is creating those conversations.
Okay. But one of the key pieces in building those processes is collaborative conversations, looking at data, working together as a team. So some of our training, PLCs are professional learning communities. So we have grade level teams, department teams, like Lincoln said, they have K-1 conversations. So we're just going to do some training on how to have better conversations and look at data and work collaboratively, because that collaboration is so important in any process. So other states call RTI, response to intervention. Kansas always has to brand their own, so it's MTSS if you're looking to compare. Thank you.
Yeah. Something you're going to hear a lot, so it's probably good to keep it on the burner a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the last week. We are having a retirement breakfast on Tuesday for all our retirees at the Strand. We'll have, I think everyone on board members did get invited if you'd like to attend.
Yeah.
We'll just be presenting some gifts and recognizing all our retirees. So, also do have some promotions, graduation. Several of you have asked, just wanted to make sure we're at Hayes Middle School on Thursday, starting at 6:30. We're going to try it on the football field, weather permitting. The forecast looks good. Mr. Albers he's promoting good weather.
You promised good weather, is that what you said?
So I think we'll be able to get that through. And then the high school graduation is scheduled for Sunday at 1:30 at Roosevelt. Wilson Elementary secured entrance update. Just, I think we're set to go here as soon as school gets out. Just had a meeting last week with commercial builders and the architects to cover the project in terms of how it's going to. Interesting is I've learned some things on the construction side. Do not buy any red iron if your life depended on it right now. So our project did have red iron in terms of the structure for the roof. It's a year away from being able to have red iron is what we were told. So had to go back to the drawing board, make some changes. I think everything's going to work out and it'll be good. Everyone agreed upon the changes. Didn't cost us any more money, and we'll be able to hopefully get it completed. The completion date is not technically set for the start of the school year, and we're very aware of that. September 17th is kind of the agreed upon date that we felt like was just because of all the stuff that goes in and product is a little delayed. So, but we'll hopefully have it done soon after school starts.
Okay.
And Ms. Sheeves aware of that, and she's already aware that we'll have to make some provision. We're going to have to change how we get in and out of the school. So we'll get that done.
And she's not retiring because of this.
Yeah. State board, I thought it was interesting. Not that this is on anyone's radar right now. It's September 27th. Seems like a long ways away. But I got a call at the state board. It's going to come to Hayes. Plans to have, wants to visit actually Lincoln. They want to go visit Lincoln and see a little bit about their redesign. Okay. So we'll probably plan that for the 27th. We'll also maybe try to get some other things, share some other highlights about our district at that day. So this is kind of a unique opportunity. The state board doesn't actually come to Hayes very often, or I don't know if they've ever come. So we're going to take advantage of it. And we don't have a long time, but we'll definitely drum up and try to get some recognition out of it.
Nice.
Just a little wrap up on the legislative session. Of course, I think you're aware that our funding that was guaranteed to us through about 4 years ago through the Gannon lawsuit, we finally got the funding. There was some lot of moments where I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I think that's every year. So we'll see an increase in our base state aid, our SPED aid, our LOB budgets for next year, which is always a positive. One of the things that I always want to make sure everyone understands, we're very appreciative of the legislature and what they allowed us, or continuing those guaranteed increases. But we're still a little bit in catch-up mode, and that's what I always want people to understand. We went 8 years where we were below inflation. Inflation had risen like, I think I saw something like 14% over that 8 years. Our funding was over those 8 years only increased about 7%. So we fell behind, and we're still in catch-up mode. Some of the great things that you're seeing that we're able to do now are we're adding staff back. I think in the last 2 years we've probably added 12 to 15 staff members. Building back to positions that were at one point here and are so vital to what we want to do academically, and giving them flexibility to schedule and meet the needs of kids. So that's what's people have to understand. We're utilizing those funds and doing some real good things. And part of what they were talking about is exactly with that funding. So one of the things that I visited with you quite a bit about was the private school vouchers, where they were going to take public tax dollars and allow individuals to take their students if they chose, if they met the qualifications to attend private school with public school dollars. That didn't fail. And last thing, I know it was the last meeting, Craig had mentioned about KSB doing a board retreat. I did contact KSB, have some dates listed for you. One of the dates I'd like to start with is July 26th. I'd like to maybe throw out a suggestion. Doesn't mean we have to do it that way. Bringing in, if it would work to do it during the day. I don't know what everyone's flexibility, if we get it out to you enough in advance, maybe that would work. But July 26th, I believe, is a Monday. That is a week following our July board meeting. I would like to schedule a day, a morning with KSB, and then follow that up with some of our own work in the afternoon. Just our conversations around maybe some planning and what we want to accomplish for the upcoming school year. I'd like to throw that out as a possibility. We don't necessarily need, I would need probably a thumbs up or a thumbs down soon, as if we are going to bring in KSB. I talked to visiting with Gary Seacrest. It would require him to get that on his calendar, as he says that July becomes a pretty busy day.
What day was that again?
July 26th, Monday.
26th.
Now, there's several dates in there if that date is just absolutely will not work for you.
Okay. All right.
What I'm thinking is I would like to do a morning and then have lunch and then maybe do some conversation. Well, we wouldn't go, real long, but just a while for us to have some conversation. It's not really in terms of, there would be no action or anything like that.
Right.
It's just a retreat where we have a conversation around the plan.
Okay.
Do you want us to email you?
Yeah,
our availability?
I can.
Kind of look at your calendar and
Okay.
and let me know. I would appreciate it if in just the next couple of days.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think if you give us warning, which we now have, we should be able to, well,
If we
I know I can arrange.
Just give me a date. We'll try to maybe do a doodle if we have to. I just thought I'd share it this evening. I'd like to start with the 26th. If that doesn't work, we'll
You said that was July 26th?
July 26th. Okay. And I
Yeah.
think that's all I have this evening.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ron.
Chris, you have some information about our audit.
So, a little bit later than normal because of COVID protocols and doing everything remotely, but overall, very positive KSDE audit. So, new auditor this time, first time in a long, long time that we haven't had Patty Herman, local auditor who's been with the district, knew us well, and become a very smooth process. So you're always a little bit on edge when you're getting a new auditor, but it was a good process, and overall very successful. FTE, so if you remember, we've got a couple of different numbers we look at. One is the head count, that's how many kids are actually there, and then the other is the FTE, or the full-time equivalents.
Right.
And that includes the different weightings and things like that. So our weightings actually increased from our September 20th count. So the way that it works is we publish our budget in July, when we're guessing at how many head count and FTE we'll have for the year.
Right.
And other things like transportation and at-risk qualifiers, things like that. So we guess at that stuff in July when we're setting budget. Then we do September 20th, which is a snapshot of that day, and then at the audit time, they go back and they're actually doing verifications on all of those pieces from September 20th. So from September 20th through the audit, FTE actually went up 4.9 due to some changes at the way that kids were counted. So we were able to count all of our preschool kids. Historically, it had been only K through 12, free lunches. So families that qualified for free lunches, K through 12 qualified as at-risk and went into that weighting. Due to some changes, now we're able to count all pre-K kids. So any kids that are at ECC or special education students that maybe we are serving in the home or come into one of our schools, if they go through the certification process and they qualify for free lunches, we get to count them in our weightings for at-risk.
Cool.
That was a big deal for us because this year, for all kids K-12, school lunches were free. Right?
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a lot of motivation to do the certification or to go through and do the paperwork to check your eligibility for at-risk or for free lunch or reduced lunch, which understandably, right, because the family, it didn't matter, you were going to get a free lunch, but what people don't understand is that paperwork directly ties to some state weightings and actual state aid for us too. So we were down in our K-12 at-risk weighting, but because of the change this year, being able to count some of those PK kids, it kept us, actually propped us up a little bit, up 4.9 FTE. Our overall head count from September 20th after the audit, and that's K-12 kids, went down a couple. It was kind of dispersed across and kind of like what we thought with the options of virtual and different things because of the year that it was. We anticipated, and we kind of wondered if it wouldn't be down from what we thought even in July. Kindergarten class was down a little bit from what we anticipated, but still our largest class at 269 students. So a couple of the things that we'll do differently going forward, some corrective things to make sure that we are counting and maximizing all of those weightings is historically we didn't have a lot of motivation to have preschool students in our power school system, which is in the end what talks with KSDE and where they capture all those numbers. We're going to start capturing every student, PK through 12, preschool, so pre-K, pre-kindergarten. So all kids will be in power school, and that's a pretty easy thing internally for us to do, just with some training and changing some of those expectations. Another one that we'll do, we did have some bilingual students get audited out, and the state changes periodically. They change their calculator that you use. We had a couple of cases where we had a calculator, so we had to go back and do some correction, but we'll do some training around that too, another easy fix. Another thing, along with the pre-kindergarten students being able to count as at-risk weighting, we also got to really capture their transportation mileage separately, and this would almost be exclusively the ECC students that are receiving transportation. Historically, we weren't able to count that towards our regular route amount, right? So those miles weren't counting towards a regular route, and so therefore it changed. We get funded in transportation, we have to track the extracurricular stuff separate from route mileage, and then you get the percentage, and then you take that percentage of your total cost to get your transportation funding. Well, by being able to count those pre-K kids as regular routes, it didn't increase our funding in transportation this year, but it does increase our cap so that we're in a position to be able to receive more funding next year if our costs go up. So a couple of things that we'll be able to change that will continue, will help us continue to maximize any of the state funding that's out there. Overall impact, so we use the state audit to get to what is called our legal max, or how much we can spend in all of our different funds, primarily general fund and supplemental general fund. Our legal max isn't out there yet because the special education state aid is the last thing that goes into it. Weightings go into that legal max also, and that'll happen around June 1st when we get the final numbers there. But right now, we adopted, back in July when we were looking forward to this year, we adopted, the goal at that point is to estimate high enough that we have the authority to spend any funds that we are able to receive through general and supplemental general. We did that. We published it about $28 million between those two funds. Right now, we sit at about 27.7 million. So we were within about a 1.5–2%, which is kind of the norm. Looking back over the last couple of years, that's about where it ends. Like I said, it'll change a little bit again around June 1st, but we know right now that we're in a good position based on what we published and where our final legal max will end up being.
But June 1st was the date we'll know, or that just when they decide to get together?
June 1st, yeah. So right now, the last piece of the puzzle is special education funding. Right. And even though that's all to the co-op, which is a part of the district, it flows through us to them. But because it flows through us and goes to the co-op, so it's not necessarily going to affect our spending authority or how much money we have in the bank as the district. Right. It will affect how much money in the bank the co-op has and how much they might have to charge for district assessments. But the simple fact, our legal max can't be determined until they know exactly how much is flowing through, because it comes to our general fund, raising our legal max by that amount before it goes to them. So it's almost a technicality at this point. We know how much money, or we have a pretty good idea how much money we have and how much we have to spend, but that can't be finalized until that flow-through money is determined.
Makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
And usually we have to know more of what that number looks like because of that influx of staff that I talked about last time I was. It's kind of up in the air right now. So everybody's in the state is kind of the same boat.
Okay. Chris, we're to be on the same with the free and reduced lunches again this year, not with the paperwork for the, to get that money. Are we going to try anything different so we don't lose some of those kids that doesn't have the incentive to turn in the paperwork?
Yeah, we're working on things. That conversation is in its infancy right now with KSDE. We've had some, KSDE has started having some conversations with the food service folks. So Jessica, and we sat down with Jessica earlier last week to start talking through the plans. Because lunches are going to be free, then the Department of Ag and Nutrition, the food service group of the feds, is basically saying, well, you can't use our forms, you can't do there's some requirement, or some things in how we normally calculate those free lunches that are kind of up in the air. We're not going to be able to use the typical federal paperwork and things that are out there. So we're working with KSDP and Jessica to figure out the best plan. But yes, it's in the forefront because it is extremely important for the district that anyone who may be close to having even a reduced lunch fill out the paperwork. And it doesn't hurt us one bit if you don't qualify, but if you would have qualified and don't fill out the paperwork, it certainly can hurt us in the amount of state aid that we get.
And I was talking to Ron, maybe we have an incentive there on the reduced lunches when we talk about fees here in a little bit.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the directions that we're headed with it.
Chris, one other question have we heard anything more from the financial side as far as the gas?
So that's still a little bit up in the air. You know, we paid the legal max, and we gave them notice that we were joining with KSB. We've done I think it was the $900 to join with KSB, so we're a part of that group. At this point, it's still KSB and their lawyers going back and forth, working with Symmetry, and they have been very upfront and saying, you know, they're working well together because Symmetry obviously they've been good partners for a long, long time, and so we're trying to work through this process, or they're trying to work through this process in a very amiable manner to get to what's fair. But at this point, it's still up in the air.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Chris. Any more questions, folks? Any additional questions? Thanks a lot. That's very great information. Every time you give us information, it's fantastic.
Very comprehensive.
Yes, yes. All right, next item on the agenda is board discussion, or basically future meeting agenda request. Does anybody have an agenda request they'd like me to consider and talk to Ron about, put on the agenda over the next few months or whatever?
Mr. President,
Yep.
discussion item would be that, including our present board members, we just need to remind the community that June 1st is you have to register if you want to be on the board, so it's always good to have involvement, so just want to make sure you're aware of that date.
All right, good, very good. I think Lance and I are aware of that date. Michelle too. Okay, very good, thank you, Alan. All right, next is the action discussion item. We have 6 items for discussion tonight. They include our lease agreement with Hadley Center, student fees for 2021-2022, elementary school social studies textbook renewal, Roosevelt security camera bids, early childhood complex storage shed, and the bond campaign and the formation of the bond vision committees. The first 4 items are action items. So first one is the lease agreement. Ron, do you want to give an overview of that one?
I'm going to let Kyle do most of the talking.
Okay.
The board is just considering this 2-year lease agreement that is in front of you in your board packet with the Hadley Center to house our early childhood special ed center, our program, and high school SPED transition program. So I'll let Kyle talk.
Okay.
I apologize, my voice is kind of going in and out, so hopefully I'm trying to get plenty of drinks here. But when I took over with the special ed and while I was working with Chris, one of our key goals around early childhood was trying to make sure we had enough space for as many students as possible. And our current space, the early childhood connections, or the early childhood complex, it's kind of limiting in the number of students we can serve in that space. About 7, and it starts to get a little cramped.
And where's that space again, I'm sorry?
At the early childhood complex, ECC out by.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do my best. It may not be working, but in the current space, we're only able to serve about 7 students at a time. In fact, we're splitting some of our slots into 2 days and 2 days so we can get more students in there. But because the way we identify students for special ed, sometimes that happens December, January, and so those students may not already be in a preschool setting in the community or at Head Start or any of our other options. And so if we don't have a space for them, then we kind of have to get creative in how we do that, or we have to just serve them at home or having them come for shorter sessions as opposed to a preschool day that might meet their needs a little bit more complexly. So I've been working through some different avenues to try and address that. The Hadley Center happened to present itself as Tiger Tots was preparing to head back to Fort Hays. We were talking and looking at that space, and then realized that the space that came with it would also work for another need that we had. At our high school, we have several, of course, our 8th graders moving up across all areas is going to see an increased
pressure on the space we have there. That's especially in special ed. We have 14 students in our life skills program that's moving up to that, into that building, and so the space is just getting a little tight for trying to serve those students. We happen to need to hire an additional teacher in the middle of the school year this year, and that presented the opportunity for one of those staff members to really focus on our 18 to 21 program, which had also been another opportunity we were trying to take advantage of. Ideally, we'd love for that position or for that program to be outside of the high school, so it feels like something different, and so that the students that are working on their vocational skills or community skills, that they had a place that really felt like more like a work environment as opposed to a school environment. Of course, they'll still, students, the way we envision this, students will still access things at Hayes High. There's a functional ag class that will be available, things like that next year that we would definitely want them to still have access to, but we wanted to see that them access high school more like college. You know, like they go for what they need and then they come back, or they are working on those other skills for life after high school to promote that independence that we're trying to develop across all of our students. This facility happens to allow us to do both, and the agreement in front of you, has the rent at I think $41.50 a month. One thing that we've been working with Fort Hays on is they're interested in using this facility still as a learning lab for their students in their educational programs, and they've in the original proposal that was sent to you on Thursday, this wasn't known yet, but on Friday we got confirmation that Fort Hays will contribute $1,300 per month towards rent for this space if they're able to access it with their interns and other the other students that might benefit from participating in this. That's a great opportunity, a great way to help support it. As far as the overall cost, in addition to that, all of the additional money that would cost, because staffing and everything else would be the same whether we're at the high school and at ECC or if we are at the Hadley Center. The only difference is the rent and some of the furnishing costs, stuff like that. All of that will be able to be covered by our ESSER SPED funds. These two particular populations were directly impacted by COVID and the pandemic because we weren't able to do as many of our community experiences. We had more parents in our early childhood, for example, that chose to keep their students at home instead of coming to the school. And so there's students that we want to be able to give them more opportunities in this type of a space. Another collaboration that's been, as we've been reaching out for resources, trying to plan this out, KSDE, they have a technical assistance and support network. One of their big focuses right now is on 18 to 21 or post-secondary transition, and they have been gracious to offer resources, consultative time that will help this develop and really see if we get some good legs under this type of a program over the next year or two. And so overall, I guess that kind of explains the purpose behind it, how we're going to be able to fund it and address it. Any other questions at this time?
Kyle, is this going to be no co-op expense, or is it going to be district expense?
That's a great question. This is all out of the ESSER SPED funds, and it will be contributed by all 4 school districts. Both programs benefit all 4 school districts that are a part of the cooperative, and so all 4 will contribute consistently to that.
Kyle, how about the transportation costs from there back and forth if you've got to go back for classes, like the ag classes that you mentioned? Is there other classes that the students will be?
Perhaps, and that there would be some transportation costs that are associated with that. That would be covered on IEPs, and we'd get reimbursed at 80%. Anything that for students that are outside of our district, the transportation from there to here would be covered by their own home district, et cetera. So the transportation shouldn't be a barrier. And actually, by being down in the Hadley Center, a lot of our transportation right now is towards opportunities that we already have there. We already have students that have gone to S&W Supply, for example, as a work study. We already go to the ARC, for example, to practice some of those community skills. By being in the Hadley Center, I think it'll actually reduce our overall need for transportation and overall reliance on that because of the unique location it is. The Hadley Center themselves have over 100 tenants that we'd be able to, that are potential partners in this with skills related to food service, clerical, custodial, and the list goes on and on from there. And then you're just a block off Main Street where you have access to so many more opportunities for our students, the public library, our community government, or our local and county government. You know, and we're trying to teach them how to navigate our community. Being downtown is a great place to do that.
So, just to clarify, we're talking a shared space, but there will not be an overlap or sharing of services. There will just be two locations.
Great.
In close proximity.
Exactly. There are some common spaces, but when when students would, from both groups would be accessing them, would be controlled and would be planned and supervised when it was appropriate. There are some vocational opportunities within the preschool that lend itself well to these students, or to the young adults that we'd be working with. So, you know, they could be helping prepare snack, they could be helping check in students at the beginning of the day. But overall, we would be looking at, you know, making sure all of those interactions were appropriate. One thing that also lends itself is the preschool is 4 days a week, and then that opens on Fridays. That opens up the entire space to our students in transition, or in the transition program, so they can access and you know, some of the vocational tasks can be, you know, helping clean toys, helping organize, helping sort, helping get new, you know, they rotate out different learning materials from 1 month or from 1 week to the next. They can be helping do all of that stuff as well.
Will we need to approach, or do we need to discuss any type of safety to our entrance or anything like that, similar to what we do with our other buildings?
Well, I'm sure and I think this is where Tiger Tots was, and so I think there has already been some work done.
Some of that.
We'll have to just put our own you know, lock on it, right? You know, and we'll plan to do that.
They already have buzz-in access, and the way that the program is set up right now, it's KDHE certified or licensed, and so it's already got some different safety pieces to that, including fire protection and other things. So.
Kyle.
Do the kids go 4 days a week, or how often do they go?
Preschool will be at, morning sessions and afternoon sessions 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, just as they currently do.
So are they going to have any contact at all with children that do not have special needs? So that
At this point, no, but one of the advantages of the bigger space will be we're not going to launch with something brand new, but we're going to focus on our students with disabilities, but our goal is to get to a point where we have peer models to get our least restrictive environment down in our early childhood programs. So ultimately that's the goal, but right now we're looking at service, and then we'll get them to that less restrictive environment. Okay. Great question.
Kyle, the space that you're taking up right now, what's the plan for that?
From my understanding, it's going to become some workspace for, I will let Donna share. She's good, has some ideas of what that space would be.
So right now, we have in one space, we have 3 people working in an office with children for mental health services.
Oh, yeah.
And then we also have a teacher that's doing RTI, which is, she's kind of floating around to open spaces. So we're going to put a portion of it in there where she can have group work, and then the other portion will be where our mental health consultant and High Plains and those can come in, and RBT to do work with children in there. Also open up some spaces for testing and therapy, because right now sometimes our therapists are in our storage space working on the ground because we don't have any other space for them.
Very good.
We're looking at a 2-year lease.
Yes.
What is the long-term planning past that 2 years that we're looking at as we flow into this?
Right. Within 2 years, I would like to see the Early Childhood Center, or the Early Childhood Special Ed, to be able to move back to a district building, pending space, of course, that right now the space is the biggest challenge. That's obviously why we're looking at something else. So that there'd be some active work done there to try and help address that. I do see the advantage of the transition program being located somewhere else, downtown, as an advantage. We'll reassess that and see, are we really getting the advantages we think? If we're not, then we'll look at maybe returning it back to Hayes High, or at least looking for a smaller, less expensive space if it's just housing just that one program. So the fact that we can house two programs in this space really, I think, takes advantage of some of the resources that are there. Also being there with the Learning Center already, we already have internet and phone already there. We've already got some of the key infrastructures there. From a special ed perspective, we have staff that cover or that have classrooms at KBC, and so by having staff in that building, it'll actually allow some of our staff to support students in the weekend center as well as students at KBC without having to travel across town, reducing that a little bit, so that barrier a little bit. So.
Let me jump in. I'm going to go ahead and move to approve the 2-year lease agreement with Hadley Center to house our early childhood special education program as well as our Hayes High School special education transition program. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion, or we discussed out? Okay, not hearing any. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right. Motion passes 7-0. Please vote electronically the same way. Next item is our school student fees. Ron, do you want to
Just
overview
the
that?
fees that you have in your packet this evening. What you're seeing are fees that have not changed from last year. All fees, there's some different options, of course, depending upon the age the child that you're enrolling, but fees will remain the same. One of the things that we are looking about, and we've talked a little bit about this, is we have always offered those that qualify for free lunches do qualify for free enrollment. There are some fees that they still do pay. It's not entirely free, but they're this year we're also expanding that into going into reduced. If you do qualify for reduced lunches, you can get some reduced enrollment fees. And I think it's important that we work with families. We understand the cost of enrolling is expensive at that time of the year, but we work with all families really well, setting up payment plans throughout the year to hopefully help them spread that out over time. So just needing approval from the board this evening to approve the fees for the next school year.
Okay, let me go ahead and move because we'll get discussion. I move that we approve the student fees for 2021-2022 school year as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion now, folks?
Yes, what I am concerned about is that we've had a lot of windfalls with the COVID. We've been able to pay for computers. We've been able to do a lot of things that would normally come out of our regular budget. And we used to have some type of report that says where these fees went to. Do you have that available, Chris? To show that this amount of, like, for instance, we've got 3,000 students. How many of those actually pay fees? Do you have that number?
I don't have that.
How much does that generate? Do you have that number?
I can give you in round numbers because most of that comes into what we call our textbook, but it's really a textbook revolving student fee fund. So most of it comes into that fund and then goes back out to the buildings and gets spent. So at Hayes High, all of the student fees go into that fund. The textbook fee stays. The rest of it goes back to Hayes High and is spent basically for either program things or for individual student things and activities. So really the only fee that stays at the district level is the textbook portion.
The families that have multiple kids, and we have the benefit of that because if a family has 4 or 5 kids, we get a huge amount of state aid from them. But they're the ones that get hit the hardest, especially if they're not free and reduced, because we're not talking about that. We're talking about the ones that pay for it. And we're supposed to have a free and adequate public education. And if you have 3 kids, you're going to spend at least $500 to get those 3 kids enrolled. And if you have more than that, we get the benefit. We don't have like a multiple kid way to help them out or something? I mean, Ron said something about we help families, but if they don't qualify for free and reduced funding, they don't get that. So if there's a way that, since we've had windfalls with COVID, if there's a way that we could cut that, maybe not eliminate it, because we used to have 0 fees, and then we had $30 fees, and then we went up one year with $170 fees. That was because we had partial kindergarten funding. Now we have full-day funding for all those kindergarten kids. We've had the Gannon lawsuit we've been a windfall for that, but we have not passed that down to we've reduced them a little bit over the years. It's come down a little bit, but not very much. Especially this year, and maybe it's just a one-year thing to give them a break, because we've gotten a big break on custodial supplies, equipment, got a lot of things. It seems like we could give those families a bigger break. If we're going to be champion for kids, this would be one way to show it.
Yeah, and I mentioned this last meeting, we are not allowed to use any kind of ESSER funds.
And I understand that, Ron, and what I was saying is that since we use those funds to supplement money that we would have normally taken out of our regular budget, there should be funds available somewhere to help out the families. It just makes sense that there's money because we've supplemented those funds for computers and, like we mentioned, other things. We should have money somewhere in our contingency fund or something. How much does it generate? Well, we need to know. Is it $150,000? What is it that it does? What do we have somewhere that could help these families? Even though we do half of that, $75,000, let's lower it. Let's help them out. We need to do something to help these families because we got the help. Let's pass it on down the road.
I guess that would be a question that I would have in terms of something you shared as far as a term windfall. I guess help me understand, is it indeed the Gannon lawsuit and COVID? I know we've gotten extra funds, but indeed those were funds that also covered other costs. So I'm a little concerned, do we indeed have extra funds, or are those funds that went into?
We have seen an increase in revenue over the last couple of years in terms of our base aid. Each year it's went up. And so, yes, our revenue has increased. But like I previously mentioned, we're still playing catch up. We're still trying to build back the things that we lost through the lean years. And so, I mean, I don't want to say we're broke by any means, but
we're not flush.
I think we're building back and things are looking good. So.
Because one thought I had was, I love the spirit of being able to help back families. One thing though, I guess, in essence, the fact it hasn't raised, and I haven't studied a trend of what these fees have done, and maybe there's other people in this room, but I guess, have we been helping families by not raising the fees? I realize it would be wonderful to discount those fees, but I'm concerned to discount 1 year. Memories are really short, and I don't think people would necessarily remember that we did it 1 year. They'll just be very angry the next time they have to be increased. And I just know that from working in a utility company that you can't play with those kind of rates. People recognize that. So I guess I'm curious as far as, have we indeed though been able to help those families by keeping the fees low versus, so I guess maybe we are achieving what is the spirit of what you're saying though too, Alan. And I guess that's where I need clarity from you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and sometimes I maybe say this too much, I've been in 4 districts. I would say the fees that you guys are looking at are very normal for school fees. I did not look at the fees and go, oh my gosh. I mean, so I think the thing is, yes, we try to help families in multiple ways. And I think some of that is done through some of the fees that are collected. As the school year, goes along, those schools are allowed to, do some things and not ask for, money to be brought to be able to do things. So I do think it's kind of helps on both ends.
And can you explain how the the USD 489 Foundation can help with this effort if there are families in need?
Sure.
Or even requests, maybe-
We've had requests made. I mean, we do a lot of that. We do have families who are experiencing some urgent needs that relate to their kids and their education. I know the USD 489 Foundation has helped several families with immediate needs. We also have a thing that we've utilized with several of our students called Care Portal, which is our district partners with some churches through the Care Portal, and we make requests, and some church families who feel like they would like to help in whatever way it's being asked, helps those families. So yes, well, I mean, we do try to help families in multiple ways.
And one thing, I appreciate Alan's comments on that, and from just looking at this, tell me if I've got this right or wrong, with the free lunch students, they're not paying that enrollment fee. With the reduced lunch, they are going to drop that 50%. And next year, if you had, like Alan said, 3 kids in the full price lunch, you're not going to pay anything for lunches next year.
Correct.
I was hoping Jessica would be here. If you have 3 kids and you've been paying a full lunch, how much savings that would be?
It's a chunk.
So every group's going to see a big savings for next year, because the full lunch will not pay anything next year.
I think the fact just taken into account, just like you said, the reduced this year being 50% of that, I mean, that in itself is going to be a big savings for them.
That's huge.
That's why I'd like to know what the numbers mean. Like if you dropped it $20, what total amount would that be? Would it be like $20,000, hardly anything? I don't know. Those are the things that would be helpful if we had that information. And then what it's being spent for. Are we spending it? If we have, I've noticed some of the prices for our textbooks, about $50,000 for textbooks that's coming up. Are we getting $150,000 and we're only spending $50 this year? Those are types of things I'd like to know. I mean, are we putting that into the fund then for next year? Are those no fund warrants for our textbooks?
No, it's not no fund warrants. Now, the money in that fund, so if we don't spend it this year, it's not a fund where you have to spend it to zero. So we would have carryover in that fund, but we also do supplement and use general fund money to transfer into the textbook fund to help with the annual textbook purchases, and they don't come every year. The big ones don't come every year, so some of it builds up a little bit over time with the student fees, and then we put some money in there when it comes time for bigger purchase to help. But again, the only piece that doesn't go right back to the buildings and to the kids is the textbook fees. That stays at the district level to help purchase those. Everything else goes back to the building and is spent in the individual funds or by the principal for.
So all the funds that they generate go back to that particular building?
Except for the textbook. Yes.
And what fund does that go into? Does it go into a separate fund for leasing or this? I mean, I don't remember that happening before. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, the textbook fund stays here in our textbook fund. The others get spent through the activity funds at the.
Right, okay, I understand for your middle school and your high school, but I'm talking like elementary, there's $90 for the elementary.
Right.
So nothing goes back to the elementary?
No, there's principal lines for instructional expenses.
Right, that's the.
Okay, I think, though, we have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded, and why don't we just go ahead and call for a vote? And if we don't approve, then we'll discuss more, and if we do, then maybe this will be a good thing to talk about next year. So, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Anybody abstaining? Okay, thanks. Motion passes 6-0. Please vote electronically the same way.
6-1.
6-1. I mean, what did I say, 6-0?
You said 6-0. 6-1.
I meant 6-1, yes, thank you. I knew we had a 6 in there somewhere. Okay. Next is the elementary social studies textbook renewal.
I'll let Shannon take this.
Yeah,
Okay.
some of the conversation we were just having, that's the reason we chose to put it right after this. So I'll start with the instructional materials grid, just to give you an overview of where we've been with purchasing of what we refer to as textbooks. If you take a look at that, and I don't know if Jess will pull it up or, the no-fund warrant was something we used because we had no textbook fund that was accumulating any amount of dollars. So if you look at the past years, 2009, 2011, 2013, the asterisk there means that those were funded through no-fund warrant. And those were big purchases. We just made a rotation. It had been a long time, so curricular areas just took their turn and we did district-wide. Many of those have expired. Typically, it's a 6-year or 7-year when you're going to, make a new adoption. I will note that since 2013, we've dropped dramatically as to, the purchases we've made. Part of that, I believe, is we've talked about how technology is a tool and using online resources. So we spent, different chunks of change with some supplemental or some online materials, nothing to the extent of purchasing a brand new curriculum. But you can see where we've been the past couple of years. And so the textbook fee, again, a reduction to that would mean we reduce building principal funds. So classrooms would get less money, which in turn would impact students at that level. Those budgets, what's not spent there, has been accumulating in a textbook fund. So it was pretty much zero when I came. Now it's over 200,000. But that's not even a balance. We need more of a balance. So we need to continue to grow that because what our teachers have been really awesome about doing is just being very frugal and doing a lot of use what they have and extending and not saying I need brand new. So when we look at adding curricular materials, it goes through a process. We have subject area committees in place. So we have ELA, math, social studies, science hasn't been as active, but when we need it to be looking at different things, we have that process in place. So as you can see, most recently were the math, K-5 and 6-8 math. Those were going to be coming up together. If you look at the upcoming, I'll point your attention to year 2022. That would be July 2022. We will be looking at a math adoption for K-5, 6-8, and that could possibly be hundreds of thousands. So we want to make sure that we keep a healthy budget in that fund. And then what I'm proposing or have in the packet tonight, and again, this is the first time you've seen it, and I'm actually going to ask that we wait and approve it in June, so you have some time to look at it. But Carrie Lacey, I want to thank her for chairing the Social Studies Subject Area Committee. I'll stop using those acronyms like SAC. I call it the SAC committee, but the Subject Area Committee. Elementary teachers would just like to extend what they have, and not every grade level wants one for every kid. Some grade levels, especially our primary grades, the focus is so much on literacy and math that they find ways to integrate the standards, and they aren't requesting, a textbook for everyone. So again, I thank our teachers for being sensible and only asking for what they need to help their students be successful in that content area. So what I did attach was a 1-year renewal and a 2-year. I was nervous about going beyond that because this particular publisher with our middle school, they revised it, so we can no longer get what we had adopted years ago. But I just got word tonight from our rep that they don't have plans to revise. So I will come back in June and actually recommend a 3-year, which is about $41,000, where if you looked at the 1 year, it's 25, 2-year was like 32, so there's substantial savings if you do a multi-year. I really think the 3-year will be better in the fact that it'll give us a little more gap between when we need to do math and then social studies. And the state we'll have a brand new social studies assessment, and it's kind of a 3-year phase-in. So we have 2 transition stages, and then it'll fully implement. That will help us know if our current materials are preparing the kids for those assessments or what direction we need to go. So I think that will be an overall better timing. But again, the teachers want to extend what they currently have. We will only purchase what we need at the grade levels we need them, and that gives you a little bit of an overview as to where we're at and what we know as far as upcoming. as we go through the MTSS process, that's a 3-year. We started this year, but it's going to be a 3-year process. So our math adoption will align with looking at Tier 1 and how our math data is looking. And then also if we need to add anything for literacy, I know with the structured literacy, the dyslexia initiative, that might be something we look at too at a little broader spectrum across the district. So I guess any questions on that?
Shanna, I was just trying to, tell me if I missed it, where does science fit in this? Is it, I don't see it anywhere in the past or the upcoming.
The last time science came due, which may have been, let's see, actually it was on there, it was one of the no-fund warrants, maybe one of the first ones, but when it came up last time, I remember the teachers saying that what they were using was working, the standards were changing, so they weren't wanting to purchase or didn't find anything that they really felt strongly about. We do have some supplementals. Mystery science is being used at the elementary level, and the middle school and the high school have used more through technology. They have been able to meet the standards through the use of some of those resources. But again, that subject area committee needs to be reactivated. We lost our chair, and there hasn't been the need like some others, but we will be taking a look at that. And that's why we want to keep a healthy budget, because when it is time and we feel good about a product that's out there and the teachers are saying this is what we need, we would definitely want to have that for the students.
Shanna, you mentioned the no fund warrants, the other stuff. If I remember right, wasn't it either with the audit or either the accounts, didn't they recommend against those?
Yeah.
Of using those? Because I thought that was the reason we got away from those, because they said it was like a huge red flag.
Right.
So,
Because we were one of the only districts in the
that actually
state
did
of
those.
Kansas.
Yes.
We're in a much better spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been on the board for 4 years now, and every year you warn me that we're going to have to spend some money on textbooks, so we're due.
And the 40,000 is a drop in the bucket, as you can tell, when you
Well, I know, I'm
get
just kidding,
300, 450. But again, I want to add that 3-year, and I really think, we'll go back to the committee and make sure they're on board. But I just, when you get to the elementary level, they're teaching every subject, and so to change a lot of things at the same time, we just want to make sure that the teachers feel good about it, and I'll bring back their recommendation, but because we now have that 3-year, I want to make sure that that's something we look at also. And this would not be ordered till July 1st for next year, so we have time.
Okay.
And is this a textbook and digital access to additional learning opportunities? Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet, thank you.
Moving on to the next item is the Roosevelt Security Camera Bids.
Yeah, this is just as part of the HVAC project that have started at Roosevelt. We'll kick into high gear here as soon as school gets out. With all the ceilings being taken out this summer, it just made sense to us that we needed to take advantage of that and speed up the process and look at installing the security cameras at Roosevelt this summer. Originally, this was on our 5-year plan for next summer, but with the ease of having all of the ceilings completely out to work on the HVAC project, just made sense. And so we submitted bids. We did receive one bid from Next Tech for $32,987.78. I'd like the board to consider approving that this evening, so we can begin work on getting that done by the start of the school year.
Okay.
I love that you have a note for us, and I think it's important to bring to the public that you are able, if you are a company that wants to be part of any bid process, they have the utmost ability to contact the district office and get their name to be notified of such bids. And therefore, thank you for doing that and notifying those people, because we do want equal opportunity. So when people see that only one bid came in, that's not because people didn't have the right, and other businesses didn't have the right.
We notified three vendors that are on our bid list.
And we also then post that
And then it's also
on the
posted
website.
for anyone who
Right.
has.
In general.
Yeah. So.
Thank you for doing that.
Very good.
Thanks for clarifying that, Tammy.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move for this, and we can discuss if we need to. I'm going to move to approve the security cameras for Roosevelt Elementary School as presented. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now, more discussion, folks?
Ron, you mentioned that they're taking all the ceiling tiles out?
In the hallways.
Just in the
And
hallways?
Some of the tiles in the classroom have been removed already.
Is there some possibility we can have some of those replaced? Because, I mean, we did all that work in the office, but we put in the old ceiling
Yeah,
tiles.
we're not, everything in the hallways is going to be new.
Or we knew, that would be
And then
nice.
We're taking, in the classrooms, we are identifying any tiles that we feel, because we only removed a section in the classrooms where the actual ductwork was going to be added. And so we're looking at every tile and going back into the classroom and trying to clean up our classrooms.
Yeah.
So that
That'd be
will
nice.
be a project this summer to clean up the entire classrooms. We're not doing new tile in the classrooms, but the hallways will be all new.
Check the office when you go in there, up there,
Yeah.
because it's all mixed match.
We might need.
New office, but old
That's
ceiling.
one of the things we might need to spend some money on in terms of, because I have spent a lot of time looking at the ceilings there at Roosevelt, and they're not in very good shape. It's just,
It's a great time to do it.
It's 1960, and I don't know if some of those tiles are probably original.
Thank you.
And they just got yellow.
Collector's items.
Yeah.
Very good. Any more questions or comments, folks? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Please vote electronically the same way. Okay, next item is the Early Childhood Complex Storage Shed.
This item isn't really for action
Right.
tonight, other than just to let you know, and I think you've heard Donna talk a little bit about, our ECC complex is a great facility. The one thing I would share, and I think Donna would share as well, is space is at a premium. They have done a really creative job of stacking everybody in to spaces and sometimes on top of each other to make things work. I think the space that we're looking at is, she mentioned, I think she said she had some therapists in the storage room. So we're trying to move that room that is just designated just for storage. And if you understand the Early Childhood Center, they have lots and lots and lots of stuff. It's always organized very neatly, but to be able to move that stuff out of the building, put it in a storage shed that will, store that, and will free up some space so that we can do some things inside the building with students.
Sounds good to me.
I know you're weren't necessarily asking for action on this tonight, but I guess I wanted to get clarification. From what I'm seeing, we aren't really going to be paying anything for it anyway. Grant funding is taking care of the cost of this?
Yes, that's correct. We're getting some funding from the American Rescue Act that I could use for
Okay.
that, because it does free up classroom space, so we were able to access some of that for the project.
So do we know, Ron, does the grant funding take care of the cost of it then?
Yes.
I guess my point being is I don't see any reason for us to wait to approve it. I mean, if we're not having to pay anything for it, the grant funding's taking care of
We're just letting
it.
you know that we're going to go out and get bids, and there'll
So
be.
you haven't got bids yet?
Oh, okay.
Architect is finishing up the bid request as we speak, should have it.
I got you.
Not this
Okay.
week yet.
Okay.
So giving you a heads up now, we'll go out to bid, and then when we come back next month, we should have bids to review and approve. Let it start swinging hammer.
And probably also to let you know, this is a storage shed that's a little more deluxe than what you would normally think. We put in a couple of storage sheds out at Hayes High. This one will be a little more, just because it's going to require, there's a lot of, manipulatives and crayons and whatever things that are required, heating and cooling. throughout the seasons of change, and so
Yeah, we want it to be a little bit, because it's gonna have crayons and everything, people will be in and out of it daily. We want it to be a little temperature controlled and, or I say, make sure there's no dust or anything else that can get into
Apples.
this facility, critters or anything like that. So-
I see,
And
okay.
The best part that's going through my mind is the mice and stuff like that.
yeah, this will be a little better. It won't be your typical garage shed.
Right.
And didn't we, a few years ago, go back in and even put some steel pods or whatever at some of the buildings for storage? So that's even the next step down on that, so sometime. Did we buy those, maybe that's a different place, like the one at Wilson, did we lease or did we buy those?
We purchased that.
We purchased those rather than look at sheds like we
And
built at
bought
Hayes High?
New, not used.
Okay. Okay,
So we'll look
That was
forward.
just because it was a quick fix on that one, because the fire marshal was telling us we had to have stuff out of the spaces that we had always had spaces, and we could get that shed and take care of that immediately.
okay.
All right, very good. Look forward to the bids when they come in next month. All right, next item, discussion about the bond campaign timeline and the formation of the bond vision committees.
Yeah, this is just, I think, the logical next step, if the board decides that that's something they're interested in, is to look at what it might look going forward in terms of forming some vision committees, and the timeline that was basically shared at the last meeting by Amber Brevlin from DLR. What is you have in front of you is just trying to, if the board's decision is to go forward on this, we would start forming some vision committees. We would form three different teams, an executive team, which would just be administration, along with a couple board members would form the executive team. A planning team, which is an educator team made up of educators in USD 49, and then the community vision team which would be parents, business people, who, as well as some board members, would be on that community team. They would meet, would all meet on the same day. Of course, the executive team would meet first in the early afternoon. The educator group would meet right after school, and then the community team would meet in the evening. I think this is probably very similar to what was done 4 years ago.
Sounds like it, yeah.
I would just like to add, and I realize this is just my sentiment, I am not speaking for the rest of this board, but there's a word in here that I think is important to stress, and it's possible April 2022 bond election. And I think there's been some concern that we are going fast, but I feel like we're just getting started. There's no feeling of rushing or anything to that nature that I think if it's not to where we have the information that's suitable at the time, then it's not on a vote in April. We would look at another time. But I guess to me, I feel like we've just started conversations, so to put the fact that we're rushing through anything, I think seems to be a little unfair to the process, so.
No, I think rushing would be an extreme. It's been 4 years since your last bond attempt. You have waited an incredible amount of time. We've made do with some facilities and issues that we're hoping to address, but rushing is definitely not in this. And I think it's also important that you understand that as you start this process, if that's what the board's decision is to start the process, those of you who have been on the board, and those of you who even weren't on the board during the last bond issue, there is always going to be people who are critical of the process, regardless of how you do it. It just comes with the territory. I would tell you, you're probably going to hear this comment from me a lot as we go through this process. You know, I use this term or this phrase a lot. If every time the mailman heard a dog barking, and they either changed their direction or stopped in their tracks, they'd never get the mail delivered. So we've got to understand that dogs will bark, and we'll just have to keep moving, and if that's the process that we want to use.
Always colorful working with you, Ron.
Yes.
The mail must go through.
Well, I have had some people contact me that are in different positions around this city or whatever, wanting to be involved, so I'll reach out to those folks. And,
Yeah, I think that would
put
be.
them on one of these
if there's
committees, probably.
individuals or that you have recommendations, please, you know, we'll probably have some kind of formal letter that we'll send to
Okay.
all the individuals and to indicate their interest. But that would be.
So it'd be better to get you those names and...
Yeah, I would think we would probably start from us and let those.
Do you want email address?
I mean, you're by all means you can check if they have any interest.
Right.
And maybe explain what's going on.
But I like the letter idea, kind of, at least it's sort of formal in a sense. It's still informal, but it's more formal, I guess, to get a letter from you.
So if the board's decision tonight to move forward on this, we would be looking at hopefully trying to schedule something probably towards the end of June. As our first vision committee meeting.
End of June, not the end of May? Because the step one engagement.
Well, I think that is just about forming the team. So we're going to start, you know, if the board reaches a consensus tonight, let's move forward on this for a possible look at a bond election. I think we'd probably take a few weeks to get all the names, you know, and get interest, and get feedback from them, whether they want to be a part, and then get everything scheduled. So I'd still say it'd probably be later June before they probably get that hold on. But we're still in a very good time frame. I mean, you're talking.
Yeah, we're still fine.
If April is the you know, possible election, you're still a long ways away.
When do we have to
And this could include employees of...
request to be on the ballot?
Sure, absolutely.
I think 6 months at a time.
Yeah, and if someone reaches out to you, by all means, consider them and send those names to here at the district.
Well, I've been saying for, I think, 4 years now, or at least 2 years since I've been president, every January that we're going to do a bond this year, so I think we better do it. So I'm just throwing my voice out there that I'm ready to move forward with this plan. So,
Bill, how far ahead of time do we have to notify them as far as to put that on a ballot, or I guess it depends if we're doing a special, or I wouldn't assume, but...
I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay. I'm just curious, I didn't know.
I'm excited about it.
is it 60 days or 90?
Well, anybody who's ever printed an item that has to go to the printer, you always work backwards from the date it needs to go to the printer. And I guess I feel like that's what we would do, is we would identify the date it needs to get on a ballot and work backwards. And if it doesn't work, then we will do an audible, to say a football term there. But that's, I mean, to me, that seems to be the most common sense approach to take.
What you're saying is,
The county election officer is the county clerk.
Yeah.
She's the one that could give you
I'll call her tomorrow.
Tammy's talking about.
I think it was like, I think it was going to be on the November ballot. We had to request that it's on the ballot in
I would say it's probably a couple months.
August. I'm not sure. I'll check it out though.
Thanks, Mike.
It's at least a couple months.
So what do you need? Are we needing to vote, or?
I don't think we need a vote. We can.
Could just be a thumbs up. It's as simple as that. If you want to, I mean, it's not really an action in terms of anything other than you're just giving me the go ahead to start
Getting information together.
putting stuff together. And we'll form some committees. and-
Well, I've already said I want to do it. Tammy has already said. Laura?
Well, there's nothing,
there's nothing-
we're not married to information.
No, this doesn't mean that you are having a bond
Exactly.
election in next April. Just means that you're
Okay,
taking the
go
first
ahead.
step
That's good.
to
I like it.
looking at possibility.
That's fine.
I was just saying, I would like to make a motion to proceed and get the information to the superintendent of schools to start this first movement of the bond issue committee, set up the committees, and with the vote, we can show that the board is supporting this rather than just a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay, I like that.
So we're looking at, if we're going by this planning process, you're wanting us to move forward on step 2, collect and analyze.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
We have a second. Any more discussion about the motion? Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Very good. The motion to move forward is approved, 7-0. Please vote electronically when we can.
And I think, as Tammy said, it's important to stress that there's no dates tied with this.
Right.
This is just to get the ball rolling, to start looking at it.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
I think investigation, although that term wasn't in part of the plan, but that's what this is about, is investigating where our needs are at, and if there's a desire.
And if anyone says we're rushing, we haven't said whether it's April or September. Just depends how fast we move and the information we collect.
Very good. All righty. Okay, I think that's the end of our meeting. We need to move into an executive session.
Don't let him talk.
We've already had.
I'm sorry, we had public discussion already. I move to enter into executive session pursuant to the Kansas Open Meetings Act for purposes relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the representative or representatives of the body or agency, in order to protect the district's right to confidentiality and its negotiating position and the public interest. Those invited to attend the meeting, in addition to the board, are the superintendent, both assistant superintendents, our director of special education, and the board attorney. We'll meet back in this room.
I would say, let's go, probably,
Give a 5-minute break.
yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Yep.
We'll go 25 minutes.
So,
Yeah, we'll meet in this room.
okay, we'll be back at 8:50. I mean, we'll be back in the regular meeting at 8:50. Yeah. Okay. Do I have a second for my motion?
Second.
Any more discussion, or any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, motion